It is NFL Daily by Chad Sports. Tyler Jones here, and we're about to do a mailbag where we answer the questions you guys submit to us on our live shows that we do every week. And you may be wondering, how do I get in on these mailbag segments? Well, you're in luck. If you subscribe to Chat Sports, then you can join us for our live shows. Turn on notifications. That way you're aware of when we go live, and you can submit questions to us, whether it's super chats or using the hashtag NFL. We got you covered either way. So turn on notifications. That way you, too, can be a part of our next mailbag segment right here on NFL Daily. Our first question this week is all about Kyler Murray. As Raj, the Rabbit, wants to know, will Kyler Murray get traded by the Cardinals after this season? Very good question, Raj, and a lot of conversation being had about Kyler Murray's future with the Arizona Cardinals these days. And think about this when it comes to Kyler Murray. He's coming off the ACL injury. There's a new coaching staff, and they're not running a scheme there that is necessarily suited for Kyler Murray. Say what you want about Cliff Kingsbury, and I do not think that Cliff Kingsbury should have ever been an NFL head coach. But at least that offense was somewhat catered towards the strengths of Kyler Murray. This offense that Jonathan Gannon is bringing in is a under-center, traditional pro-style offense that's not made for Kyler Murray's strengths. So with that said, I know the Cardinals are going to pay a lot of money to Kyler Murray, but he's not necessarily the right fit for what the Cardinals are trying to do long term. And then a couple things as well. The Cardinals, they're going to have 2 top picks in next year's draft, likely in position to get one of those top quarterbacks like a Caleb Williams or a Drake May. I think it's going to be awfully tough for Arizona to get out of Kyler Murray's contract or get somebody else to take it on. And I believe in Kyler Murray. I think Kyler Murray is still one of the top quarterbacks in this league despite having a down season last year. If I were to guess right now, I think Kyler Murray is back in Arizona at the moment. But I don't say that with a whole lot of confidence. I very well could see things unravel and he ultimately get traded and they go for one of those young quarterbacks. My guess at the moment, time will tell, could change, is that he's back in Arizona next year. Robert writes in, hashtag NFL, most surprising teams this season and most surprising players this season. Very good question, Robert. Let's start out with the most surprising teams this year. The teams that catch my interest that could make that big jump. I think the Lions are going to win the NFC North. I think this is a breakthrough year for Detroit with Dan Campbell and Jared Goff. And in that team, I think the Lions are going to be a really good team, a force to be reckoned with in 2023. I think the Seattle Seahawks take a step in the right direction as well. They went to the wild card round last year. I think they're going to be there toe-to-toe with San Francisco in that division. Meanwhile, the AFC side, I know there's a lot of people hating on the New York Jets, and believe me, they deserve a lot of criticism having not been to the playoffs since 2010. But it wasn't just Aaron Rodgers that they added. They spent a lot of money, got better with guys like Dalvin Cook, McCole Hardman, already had Garrett Wilson. Jets are going to be a force to be reckoned with as well. Dolphins right there in their division. If Tua can stay healthy, they're going to be a decent football team. So those are the teams I'm watching for. Surprising players as far as that goes. I think Sean Watson, now that it's been months removed from everything that went on with Deshaun Watson, he can sort of put things in the rear view. And he's got something to prove. I'm watching to see if Deshaun Watson has a bounce-back year. I think Kenny Pickett can take a step in the right direction as well. He's got my interest to see what he can do. Those are a couple names that come to mind as far as some surprise players potentially in the NFL to watch for. GM Evan, who's got 2 teams he roots for. That just makes me shake my head a bit. Nonetheless, GM Evan writes, should New England bench Mac Jones and start Malik Cunningham? Okay. The hype on Malik Cunningham is getting a little crazy. Granted, I like Malik Cunningham. I'm rooting on the guy. On Patriots Today, I believe we're calling it Malik Mania. But with that said, as far as the idea of benching Mac Jones and starting Malik Cunningham, that's just absurd. Okay? Malik Cunningham, they're not even wanting him to necessarily play quarterback. They're trying to give him snaps at receiver. They want to get him on the field in some way there. No. Mac Jones, I think, is going to have a nice season. We mentioned surprise players. I think Mac Jones is going to bounce back this year. I think he's going to be better than what he was as a rookie. Him and that Bill O'Brien offense, he's got his poise, he's got his accuracy going. I'm all in. I think Mac Jones is going to have an outstanding season in 2023. Malik Cunningham, they'd like to get him on the football field, but, I mean, if we're going to be real with y'all, Malik Cunningham is not that great of a passer. He's a hell of an athlete, but his future is not a starting quarterback in this league. No, you're not benching Mac Jones for Malik Cunningham. Back to Kyler Murray. Let's ask you all this. Should the Cardinals trade Kyler Murray? Weigh in, tell us in the comment section. Y for yes, in for no, our pinned comment today. Let us know what you think. Should the Cardinals trade off Kyler or not? What do you think? Tell me. Vince writes in, which NFC teams would make it to the playoffs if they were in the spot of the New England Patriots? That's a very good question. To me, it would be interesting because you have 3 playoff caliber teams as is, right? With the Dolphins, the Jets, and the Bills. And if I were to take NFC teams in their spot who would still make the playoffs, I think if they had to play that schedule, essentially, I think San Francisco, Philly, Dallas, Seattle, maybe the Giants. But, I mean, beyond that, it's hard to say for sure what NFC teams could make the playoffs if they're in the same spot the Patriots. Patriots got their work cut out for them. It's a long road ahead to get to the postseason. That team's got some decent players. They just don't have any great players on that Patriots roster. Alex writes in, the Steelers' record prediction. What will it be for the Steelers in 2023? What we've seen from Mike Tomlin there in Pittsburgh over the years, although it's been a while since Tomlin won a playoff game, they never are bad. They're just consistently average the last few years. As I've said before, I think Kenny Pickett's going to take a step in the right direction. I like the talent around him. I think George Pickens could be a top 5 receiver by the end of the year this year. That defense is really good as well. They got some top players on that defense. Steelers might surprise some people. I think the Steelers get 9, maybe 10 wins potentially in 2023. I think if you're a Steelers fan, if you get that many wins, you ought to be very pleased. And I think it's very much in reach. They're going to have some things go their way, some luck on their side. The Browns have to underperform a little bit, but it can be done. Jim Evan writes in, Colts trade Michael Pittman Jr. and Jonathan Taylor to Arizona for 2 first-round picks and a second-round pick. You know, here's the thing. I'll say this. When it comes to the Indianapolis Colts, they are way closer to the bottom than they are the top. Okay? And the Arizona Cardinals are also in the same position, way closer to the bottom than they are the top. Both teams are arguably competing for that number 1 overall pick with each other. I do not think the Colts want to help the Cardinals or vice versa. I don't see a trade going on between those two because they're competing for the same thing. Now, the Colts, with Anthony Richardson, they're not necessarily going to be looking for a quarterback next year unless all goes to hell with Richardson. But, no, I would be surprised if that type of deal went down with Arizona, GM Evan. Speaking of rookies, we mentioned Anthony Richardson. We have rookie jerseys on sale. Your favorite rookies like Bryce Young, Anthony Richardson, C.J. Stroud, Devin Witherspoon, among others. We got all of them. Bijan Robinson as well, very popular jersey. And they're all for sale at one place, chatsports.com/NFL jersey. You can get yours now while supplies last and still get it in time for football season. So if you're a fan of one of these teams, now's a great time to get these rookie jerseys because you can wear them for their entire careers when they ideally still play for your team the entire time. Or maybe you're a college football fan and your favorite college player got drafted and you want to keep rooting them on in the pros. Whatever it may be, we got all sorts of selections, all the rookies to choose from. Get yours today. Chatsports.com/NFL jersey while supplies last, just in time for the season. Chatsports.com/NFL jersey to get yours now. Got time for a couple more questions. Let's go to Vince. Vince writes in, what does the Texans need out of C.J. Stroud to make the playoffs if Will Anderson, Dell, and Stingley ball out? The Texans, I think, are going to take a big step the right direction. But they are still very flawed in some areas, particularly the offensive line there with the Houston Texans. C.J. Stroud would need to just play consistent. Will Anderson, I think, would need to play at a Pro Bowl level. Tank Dell, I think, would need to potentially lead that team in receiving. Stingley's got to look like one of the best corners in the league. A lot would have to go their way for the Texans to make the postseason. Luckily for them, though, they're in a pretty weak division. They would also need the Jags to somewhat struggle and underachieve potentially. But Houston, I think you're going to like the product you see on the field. It's going to be improved this year. Last question. This one from Ben. Ben writes in, Stefon Diggs to Dallas. Could we afford it, and what would it take? So it doesn't seem like Diggs is too happy with things in Buffalo right now. I still think the Bills are too invested to move on from Diggs at the moment unless things really change. But, you know, I would say it would probably require a first and then a couple other picks. Then you got to pay Diggs. It wouldn't be cheap, but I would be shocked. I would be shocked if Diggs ended up in Dallas. I lied. I got one more question for you. Maxim99 writes in, hashtag NFL, does Josh Jacobs ending his holdout end his chances of getting traded? For now, yes, it does. Josh Jacobs will play for the Las Vegas Raiders in 2023. Will he play beyond that next season? Remains to be seen. Probably not, would be my guess, that he moves on after this upcoming season. The Raiders are going to be in complete rebuild mode after this year. Jacobs isn't going to fit their timeline. He's going to be an older running back looking for that second contract. I think they'll move on after this year. But I do think he is going to end up playing for the Las Vegas Raiders, that they'll put things aside for now and they'll figure it out later. What are the chances the Raiders move Josh Jacobs before the season starts? Scale it for me in the comments section. 1 through 10, what do you think the odds are of Josh Jacobs leaving Las Vegas?